As entrepreneurs, there's a reason why we decided to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to tell the stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. On today's podcast, I'm speaking with Pam Nemec. So, Pam, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. I know we already had an awesome conversation in the green room, so this is going to be an amazing episode, and I'm really happy to have you here and really honored to have you here. So,
Well,
thank you so
thanks
much for being
thanks
with
for
us.
inviting me. I'm excited to have this conversation, especially considering all the conversation we already had. It'll be
Exactly
easy.
right. Exactly. And I think that when you asked about what the audience is that we have, we went into entrepreneurship and some of our journeys, and that's really what this is about. And it's really about hearing those stories that help us to bridge from that moment when we realize we are really awful employees to we need something different and we start to become entrepreneurs, and that gap that happens naturally whenever we
Mhm,
do that. So
mhm.
what I'd like to start off with is a little bit, can you do some background about where you came from and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so it is interesting. There is a transition point, right? That you just decide, like, hey, I'm ready to do the entrepreneurial thing.
Mhm.
And for me, that happened in 2021. I had worked for a company that was a multi-billion dollar brand. It's a restaurant brand that was originally from Texas.
Mhm.
And I worked there for 20 years for Whataburger, and I absolutely loved my job. I mean, I enjoyed it, and I did well. And I started as a marketing manager and ended up as their senior vice president of HR and culture and communication. And I love the job. I love the people. In 2019, the company sold. And when the company sold, I stayed for another 2 years. And then after that, things were changing, and I just didn't feel like I fit there anymore. And with that, I left. And when I left, I had a lot of job offers, people coming to me and saying, hey, come work for us, come over here, do this, do that. And I was flattered and, I guess happy to have the offers. But I have to tell you, Andrew, every time I would be asked, I would just get this pit in my stomach. And, even though I'd had this good experience, um, I just knew that I could not go back into the corporate world. I wanted to help the corporate world, but I didn't want to be beholden to a company telling me what I needed to do, when I needed to do it, how I was going to do it, and so on. So I think that was a really pivotal moment for me, and I just made the decision that I wasn't gonna do that. So I started a business where I would speak and consult and coach leaders on how to better communicate inside their company in order to improve the culture and ultimately their performance. Because I know leaders care a lot about performance, as they should, right? But if they are not connecting with their team in a way that feels informative, reliable, respectful, it will impact performance. And so I've created a whole system around how do you actually communicate inside a company? How do you keep that going when you're a busy CEO or you're a busy leader trying to run everything else? How are you supposed to do all of that, right? Well, you don't. That's the short answer. You don't. You build a structure and a system that helps you do it.
Yeah,
So that's
so
what I do now.
and I think that's something that's really interesting. And I love the fact that you brought the small CEO, small companies, startups especially. My first professional job was with a small startup, and so I'm used to this community, very very different than corporate world. We
Yeah.
hear a lot about corporate culture. How does that reflect into small companies where it might be like three founders who are just going, they're doing the 20-hour a day thing.
Yeah.
How does a corporate culture work into that situation, and how can they improve how they work using corporate culture in a completely different world than the corporate world?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about a smaller organization, I mean, I get this question a lot, especially when, if you're working in a big company, obviously you need structure, you need communication, you need those things in place. And most companies have them, although you'd be surprised, a lot of large companies do not, is what I'm learning. However, if you're in a small company, here's what I'd tell you. There is going to come a point you're going to grow. and you're not going to be able to just gather people up in a room. You might not be able to just gather them on a quick call because everybody isn't in front of a laptop. You might get to a point where people are so dispersed, they're all working almost in silos, and they're not coming together and connecting on the work like they need to be because it's just gotten too big. So, what I encourage growing entrepreneurial organizations to do is, you don't have to have this when you first get started, but at least think about, when you start to grow, the more structure that you have in place early, the easier it is to scale. But if you wait until you're this big company and things are out of control, it's a lot harder to put that in place. It's not impossible, but it becomes harder. So to me, I'm like, define your culture, get what it is you want to be. What are the values of the organization, right? What is the mission? What's your origin story? Why did you even get started in this? Document those things, because, God willing, you're going to be a huge success. The company's going to grow. You're going to expand. You're going to get more employees. So get clear on where you want to take it so you can be intentional about what you're trying to build. And I think that's the one thing that I think entrepreneurs, no matter how small you are, could do today, and actually start building that. In fact, I created a tool for people that I call it Rally Cry Roadmap. And it's like, what's your rally cry, right? If you had to tell somebody, what is our rally cry here? Where are we going? What's the direction? What are we trying to do? It's a process that takes people through that to say, okay, this is my rally cry. And no matter how small or big you are, you know what it is. Even if saying it to yourself every morning, right? It's a direction, and it's intentional, and that way um, you're not just letting culture happen. You're intentionally shaping it into what you will be proud of one day, and I think that's an important aspect of leadership.
Mhm. I love that rally cry. What was the sequence of events that brought you to the place where you came up with that rally cry thing? I would love to hear that story because it really resonates with me as far as an entrepreneur. I think we all need a rally cry.
Yeah, that's funny you said that, because I was talking to somebody the other day who's helping me with some copy I was writing, and we were talking about this, and she said, "What do leaders want, Pam? What do they want?" And I was going through all these things. Well, they want high performance, and they want their teams to be aligned, and they want people to be doing good work, and they want it reliable, and then it's this and that. And I said, I don't know, Kelly. I said, I think people just want their teams all in. They just want them all in on the role they're in. They want them all in on the company, on the mission, on the purpose. They want them all in. And so that led us to talking about, you kind of need a rally cry. You need people to understand where you're going. And so in that whole conversation, I said, I'm going to create a process for leaders, entrepreneurs, to be able to use it to actually get to the rally cry. What elements do you need? What aspects do you need to know in order to actually build your rally cry? In a way, it's a tagline. It's like the Nike's "Just Do It," right? Um, it's something that encapsulates what matters most to you. Now, granted, it requires a whole lot of explanation on the back end, probably, but it's a reminder that people can always look to. It's that North Star that your company can follow. Now, I will tell you, word of caution: if you create a rally cry in your company, and you roll it out at a meeting, and you're all excited, and you put it on a poster, and you have it on your email sign off, and you're super jazzed about it, and then you don't behave that way, then you're going to elicit eye rolls in every aspect of your organization. So you have to follow up on it. You have to believe in it so much. It has to be so authentic to you that it's an easy thing to live out. It's an easy thing to talk about and actually emulate every day inside your company. So that would be my one word of caution. Don't create a rally cry that you're not ready to back up, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I did it. I just created it because I just felt like people needed a starting point when it came to defining the culture they really want inside their organization.
And I think that's something that, especially if you're in a startup two or three founders, your job title is yes, all of them.
Yes.
And you're working in this hive mind where one person answers, two people answer the same question. It goes in this really weird, it's a different type of
Yeah.
communication style. And I think there's a point when you can get so far in the weeds of just grind, 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 grind that you forget what that North Star is. Or you get in what I call the suck. Another good friend of mine calls it the valley of sorrow. So that moment
I've
when
been
things,
there.
I think we all have, right? We all have
Yes.
our own names for it, but it's the same
Uh-huh.
thing where we're just grinding and sometimes having that North Star to be able to help us. It reminds me of a meme I saw a long time ago. I forget where I saw it. Of this little girl who is probably like 3 or 4 years old, just bawling, going, I am happy.
It's so true. That's how you feel as an
Yeah,
entrepreneur. You're like,
yeah,
no, I want to be doing this.
yeah,
I
exactly,
really
right.
do.
And it gets us through those the difficult moments that we have that come as part of being an entrepreneur. It's one of the things I love about entrepreneurs. We're some of the
Mhm.
strongest people on the face of the planet because we've been through all of this, and it's like, oh, great, I've been
Another
to this
day at
road
the
before. We're gonna
office.
make it work. It's all good. We're fine.
Yeah.
It was, you know, $250,000 tax bill. We're good. We're gonna make it work.
Right, right.
Stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah. So
which has
fun.
happened to a few friends of mine actually.
Oh, that is stressful.
Yes, but we get through it, and that's that I
Mhm.
like the fact that you have this rally cry because I'm a fan of things like vision statements and
Mhm.
stuff like that, but to me rally cry resonates a lot more because there's sometimes when it's just I'm sitting in a corner just raging going I am happy and that's when
Right.
my rally cry will help.
Yeah, you need to remember the purpose. Like, why'd you get started in the
Yeah.
first place? Because I think we can get lost in the suck, in the valley of sorrow, in the challenges that we're facing, and we start to wonder, is it worth it? Is this worth it that I'm doing this? Am I, and in some cases, I'm stressing my family financially if I'm doing this right now instead of going and getting a real job, as they say. Um, so you start to worry about all of those things. But if you can look up and be reminded of the real purpose behind what it is you're doing and why you started in the first place, it reignites that passion in you and that commitment so you can keep going. And I think that's another reason it's important. It's not just important for employees inside your company, it's important for you as the entrepreneur or the leader. You got to remember that there's a reason why you started. And if you quit too soon, people say that the only people who fail are those that quit too soon. And I believe that. I think that the harder you work and the more you stay with something, if you believe in it, things will start to work out. Now that could just be a little Pollyanna of me, but that's how I believe, and that's why I keep doing it.
Yeah, I have a good friend of mine that said that once I was just having a rough time at something. I was very deeply in the suck and just texted, raging
Hmm.
to him, because this is all going wrong, this is going wrong. And he wrote back, he's like, the only way you can fail is to quit, period. And I
Yeah.
needed to hear that at that moment. I think it's a really
Hmm.
powerful statement because it says mistakes are another way to learn. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. There's
Right.
you can do this,
Hmm.
but the only way you can fail is to quit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that people do quit too soon
Yeah.
sometimes. I think that, and I'm not blaming anyone. I get it. It's hard. But I'm like, but what if you stuck with it? What
Mhm.
if you got through another day, another week, another month, another quarter? Would you look back and say, man, look how far I've come, right? That I have. I've had those moments where I've like, I don't know if I should keep doing this or if I should just go work, in the traditional job. And every time that has crossed my mind, something has happened in my life. Call it the universe, I call it God, but something has happened where it's like there's a little, like they call them shoulder squeezes. It's like, you're good, keep going, and I'll get a gig speaking. I'll get another consulting contract. I'll get somebody calling me saying, I would love it if you would, serve on this committee with us, or I would. And so there's points where you think maybe I don't belong here, and then somebody comes along and says, yes, you do. And so I think that's another aspect of people that are, are in the early stages of entrepreneurship, that it's important to watch for those little nods from the universe that say you're good, you're on the right path, and keep going. Because I think that can help too when you're struggling.
Yeah. And I think that we, as entrepreneurs, we need to hear it more often because there
Yeah.
is that huge amount of self-doubt. There's that huge amount, that thing of what the hell am I doing? This is not the easy path. And I think,
Yep.
part of it's just because we're crazy enough. We were talking earlier where, I
Yeah.
will badly paraphrase Steve Jobs and say we're the ones that are crazy enough to change the world. We have
Hmm.
these amazing ideas and then going out, implementing them and creating these amazing things
Yeah.
that eventually benefit the world.
Hmm.
And there's a different mindset that has to happen. And I think part of that self-doubt comes from the old mindset. And it's that old mindset trying to creep in
Hmm.
and say, you're supposed to be off on weekends. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to balance, the work-life balance, which I
Hmm.
sort of chuckle when I hear that,
Yeah.
because our work-life balance is totally different because it's a
Yes.
very personal and professional journey.
Yeah.
So, because then there's not just a professional part to the entrepreneur side of things. Personally, we grow a lot as well, and they have to be interconnected to make that work.
Yeah.
So it's kind
And
of
I
a
think you said something really important just a minute ago. You said, eventually we will change the world, right? We eventually what we have created will help somebody. And if I don't change the world, maybe I'll change someone's life. Maybe I'll help someone's company. I don't know, but I know that it's eventually. And I think that's the other real struggle we all have as entrepreneurs. Most of us are also very impatient.
oh yeah,
Am I speaking your language? Because I'm impatient. I want
oh yeah,
everything done yesterday. I want it done now. I want the success of Mel Robbins right now, right? I want it all, right? So it's hard for an entrepreneur to understand eventual.
yeah.
You're going to get there. I'm like, no, no, no. I need this to go, right? And so that's been a really big struggle for me, is to be more patient, and that's another challenge in entrepreneurship. So, in a corporate setting, I had a team of 200 people around me. That was just on my team, and I had all these resources and a big budget, and then if they weren't on my team, I could go get them anywhere else in the company as resource wise, and so I had all this access. Well, when I decided to go on my own, I looked around and I didn't see all that, right? I was like, I don't have that big budget anymore. I don't have those resources at my fingertips. I'm going to have to rebuild this. How am I going to get what I want to get done? How am I going to actually execute? And so then it became, be more resourceful, which is another, I think, attribute of an entrepreneur, is you got to get resourceful. You have to say, okay, I may not be able to have a full-time team, sitting outside my door like I used to, but I can have a group of freelance. I have a freelance network that is killer now. I've created a lot of freelancers that are now, I consider them my team,
Yeah.
and I would say they look at it that way because the way I treat them. And I just look at, that's my team, and those are the people that I rely on to help me get the work done, and they've been awesome. And but it's rebuilding and the team, but it's also rebuilding the way you think about that. You can't use all the traditional methods that you used in a corporate world to create an entrepreneurial world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I definitely was challenged with in the beginning. I was like, I miss my team. I miss
True
I
story.
miss the money.
True story. Very, very true. And
Right?
that's where we start. We start as the CEO of our company, chief everything officer,
Yes.
and we just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to. Otherwise, I mean, you don't have the money to pay for everybody to do stuff for you.
Yeah.
Until you start making money, you can't do that. So, yeah, it's interesting. So, it's been
One of
no.
the one of the things you mentioned though is just using freelancers as your team as a
Mhm.
contingent workforce. And I think it's a really powerful tool that entrepreneurs have. And
Mhm.
so when you said that you had a team, probably very capable people, did what they did, very professional, good at what they do, but there's
Mhm.
something different about a freelancer because in their own way, they are also an entrepreneur. they
Yep.
also have a passion for what they do, and it brings
Mhm.
another level of service that you can get.
Mhm.
I know that my contractors are absolutely amazing because they have this is their niche. They're very good at it. They have
Mhm.
that world of I'm going to push this button and see what happens.
Mhm.
They're
Yes.
and I think it makes this interesting kind of entity out of its own, where you kind of get this group of a contingent workforce where you can scale and pull
Mhm.
back as you need. But again, also they're also entrepreneurs. They understand what you're going through. They understand who you are, why you think the way you do, and they can make and it's a much better working relationship, I think.
Yeah, I've seen that in the people that I'm working with. It's like I'm rooting for them and they're
Mhm.
rooting for me,
Yeah.
and they get it on another level. And I see the passion in the work they do.
Mhm.
Um, and they are doing it because it is their company, right? They've created their own thing, and they want it to be the best possible product ever, just like I do. And so when you got two people that think like that working together, you can really create something pretty special. And that's what I'm seeing now. And the longer I'm working with them, the more that I can complete their sentence and they can complete mine, right? You just start to get to know each other and you're like, oh, no, no, Pam's not going to like that. Or, oh, I know Eric's not going to want to do it that way. So we can talk through stuff like that. And I've actually been surprised how bonded I could get to freelance folks that many of them don't even work in the area that I live. I mean, these are
Yeah.
all virtual relationships that I've formed through other contacts. People either introducing me or me searching them out. So
Yeah.
it's just interesting. It's very different.
It really is. It really
Yeah,
is. But I prefer it. I like those
it's
relationships because
fun.
I pick somebody who's good at what they do and we vibe with each other and we really have this great relationship and it just turns into something special. So yeah, it
Yeah,
is an amazing
that's
thing.
cool.
Cool. So at the end of every episode, I do have one question that I ask people, and that is, what
Mhm.
is a book or podcast that has had a major impact on your life that you can share with the audience?
Well, these are more personal development pieces that I'm about to share with you. I've read a lot of business books, but I'm sure you've read most of those, so I'm not going to bore you with that. But on a personal development standpoint, I am in this moment. I just started reading a book called Let Them, which is by Mel Robbins.
Okay.
It is a great concept, and I'm already like all in on the book. It is about the idea that you can only control the way you respond to people. You can only control what you do, and you have to allow people to do things that you may not like, and you've got to let them do them, but you do you. And I think that's a good message for when you're being an entrepreneur. Don't get caught up in what everyone else is saying or doing. Worry about yourself and let them. And so the title of it is "Let Them," and I would highly encourage people to read it. And then the podcast that I love is there's a couple of them. Gosh, I'm listening to all kinds of podcasts right now. Brendan Burchard.
Okay.
I started listening to his podcast. I really like what he has to say.
Yeah.
Um, he's kind of goofy at times, but he's right. He's right on, as it relates to personal development. So I like listening to those kind of things because even though I'm, been in the corporate world 20 plus years and, raised two kids and all of the things. And I just think you can always learn, you can always grow. And I like having fresh perspectives and new ways of thinking, because I think it makes us all a little more open to the world and open to other people and just able to grow. So those are my two I would recommend right now because I'm reading them and listening to them at the moment.
Awesome. Perfect. Pam, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Pam, check out the link in the description.